Like if you found the video valuable. The painting arrived without warning. It came in an unmarked crate, delivered by a truck with no company logo. The museum's curator, Elizabeth Crane, stood in the freight bay, frowning as two men in coveralls unloaded the box. When asked who had sent it, the driver only shrugged. Instructions said it's for the Easton Gallery. That's you, right? Elizabeth nodded reluctantly, signing the receipt. The crate was heavy, about 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide. Its wood was old and splintered in places, as though it had passed through many hands before arriving here. Inside the museum's restoration lab, Elizabeth pried open the crate carefully. The scent of oil paint, aged wood, and something darker, like damp soil, wafted into the air. The painting was a portrait of a man. He sat in a high-backed leather chair, dressed in 19th-century formalwear. His hands, pale and veiny, rested on a silver-topped cane. But it was his face that unsettled her. His expression was oddly lifelike, eyes an unnatural shade of green, almost luminescent in the dim light. The label affixed to the back read simply, M. Ashcroft, 1876. Artist unknown. Elizabeth didn't recognize the name. She checked the archives. Nothing. No mention in auction catalogs. No provenance trail. The museum's board would be furious if they found her displaying an undocumented piece. But still, there was something captivating about it. Something that whispered, "Let me stay." That night, Elizabeth dreamed of the man in the portrait. He stood at the foot of her bed, unmoving, his green eyes glowing faintly in the dark. When she awoke, sweat-soaked and breathless, the clock read 3:03 a.m. Her bedroom door was ajar, though she was sure she'd locked it. She shook it off. Stress. Probably sleepwalking. Over the following week, strange occurrences mounted in the Easton Gallery. Visitors reported a cold draft near the portrait, though the HVAC system showed no malfunction. A docent swore the man's eyes followed her. Security footage, reviewed one evening by a skeptical night guard, showed a frame skip at 3:03 a.m. The guard rewound it, frame skip again, same time. But in the skipped moment, the portrait's subject seemed to be smiling. Elizabeth, determined to get answers, reached out to a friend, Harold Mendez, an independent art historian with a taste for the occult. When Harold arrived, he inspected the painting for over an hour. "It's not just oil and canvas," he said quietly. "There's blood mixed in with the paint. Old, human." Elizabeth laughed nervously. "That can't be. I've seen this before," Harold interrupted. "Binding rituals, souls trapped in artwork. But this one's different." They decided to store the portrait in the museum's vault for the night. Out of view, out of reach. But that night, the museum's alarms blared at precisely 3:03 a.m. When the guard arrived, the vault was wide open. Inside, the crate was shattered. The painting had vanished. The next day, Elizabeth was frantic. She ordered a lockdown of the museum, interviewed every staff member, and filed a police report. Nothing turned up. Later, in her office, she found something odd. A single, green paint stroke on her desk, still wet. Her breath caught in her throat. She locked the office door and called Harold. "We didn't trap it. We freed it." That evening, Elizabeth and Harold returned to the museum with an ultraviolet scanner and Harold's grimoire collection. They searched every room, every corridor. At 2:55 a.m., they reached the Easton Gallery. There, hanging on the wall, was the portrait. Only now, the man's eyes were open wide, and his mouth twisted into a grin. He held the cane in one hand, and the other was empty. But there was something else. In the background of the painting, a faint new detail had emerged. A desk, and on it, a nameplate that read, E. Crane. Elizabeth staggered back. "It's painting me in." Harold flipped through his books, pages rustling like dry leaves. "There's only one way," he muttered. "You have to trap it in something else. Another portrait, another vessel." Elizabeth's mind raced. The museum's photography wing had hundreds of portrait prints. If they could lure it to one, maybe. Then the lights flickered. 3:03 a.m. The air turned frigid. The figure in the painting began to shift. Slowly, unnaturally, it stood up, within the frame. Its cane tapped once against the floor of the painted world. Then, from the frame's edge, a pale hand reached outward. Elizabeth screamed and grabbed a large framed photo from the adjacent wall. It was a sepia portrait of an anonymous 1920s flapper. She smashed it against the floor, exposing the canvas backing. Harold chanted from his book in a dead language, urging her to bind the figure. The portrait man's hand reached further, now halfway into the room. Elizabeth took the shattered photo, dragged it toward the original frame, and pressed the exposed canvas to it. There was a sudden, ear-piercing shriek, both in their minds and the room itself, and then silence. The lights returned. The temperature rose. The original portrait was empty. The chair sat abandoned. On the cracked photograph, the flapper's smile had twisted. Her eyes were now green. The museum closed for renovations for the rest of the month. Elizabeth resigned quietly 2 weeks later. Harold disappeared from public record entirely. The photograph was stored deep in the archives, mislabeled and sealed in a lead-lined case. But sometimes, during late tours, staff say they hear a faint tapping sound, like a cane, echoing through the Easton Gallery, always at 3:03 a.m. in the photo. Its subject's smile grows a little wider each night.